And welcome back, folks. If you're just joining us, and I see you Raiders, thank you for coming in. Mel 1997. We are Corathon. My name is Zoku, and it's my honor to be your host for the next couple of blocks here today. Because here at Corathon, if you're just joining us, we are a mutual aid fundraiser raising money for Cora, a friend of the community who's looking to move to a place who will accept her for who she is. And due to the anti-trans legislation in the state of Texas, Cora needs help with moving expenses so she can safely move to a state with LGBTQ plus friendly laws and communities. We're here putting on this marathon that you're watching right now here at twitch.tv/happyby3. To support and provide for a trans friend in need. And we are so grateful for any donations you can provide to help. That's !donate in chat to get those handy links to donate. You can donate securely through her GoFundMe, or you could donate directly to her and avoid fees through Venmo. And of course, make your Venmo donations public so we can read your comments. And by we, I mean me, because hi, I get to be your host for the next couple of runs. Speaking of the next couple of runs, we've got a doozy for you here today. Coming up, we have a fantastic bunch of runs. We've got SSX Tricky, All Races, No Wormholes being run by Junior, Sonic Adventure DX, Director's Cut, Tales Story being run by Risuru, Sonic Frontiers, Any Percent No DLC by KD4, and of course, coming up next, GRIME Kinship Percent by mathulu. And that's just the runs I get to host for y'all. And this is, of course, only day one of our marathon. Only day one. We'll be continuing straight through tonight. We'll be continuing straight through to tomorrow. A little sleep break, of course. Self-care. Take care of yourself. And of course, !mark schedule in chat will get you that link. But please check out our schedule. We've got a lot of fantastic runs for y'all and a lot of fantastic incentives. I just mentioned that SSX Tricky All Races No Wormholes run. You can even see it there on the screen right now, being run by Junior in a little over an hour. Math is hard. But you can make me do math because we've got an extra track showcase, and you know what? I've proved myself right already. Math is hard. I was about to say we've got an extra track showcase that needs to be met, but we have met that already. But we do have more incentives for you. I believe that's !mark incentives to get that link. But let me tell you about what we've got coming up. Fez has 2 incentives. Oh my goodness. And Fez is coming up right at the end of my block. You can get a bonus 0% run. Tag on an extra 4 minutes to our marathon. That's like a $50 goal. And of course, we can replace the Fez sprite with a Sonic sprite. Make Fez part of our Sonic block for an additional $25. Now, we are raising through GoFundMe and Venmo this time. This is a mutual aid fundraiser. So when you donate, please leave it in the comments what you're donating to if you want to donate to an incentive so we know. Or, feel free to drop by and chat and say, hey, I donated to help get Cora out of Texas, and I'd also like my donation to go to your choice of incentive. And all of that helps so much. But of course, most importantly, you being here to support us helping a friend in need is what helps us the most. So thank you all for joining us today. And y'all, we have kept you waiting. This is a marathon about raising money for friends, for people we have a kinship with. And you know what? I can't think of a better run category for this than kinship percent. So, Mathulu, you're here with Grind Kinship Percent. Take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Soku, and welcome in, everyone. We are here today showcasing another all-capitalized game here, GRIME. This time we are doing effectively the good ending speedrun Kinship Percent. I'm very excited to showcase this game. It is a lot of fun. It's a game. I'll start talking once I get going here. But yeah, this is basically any percent. We're gonna start from a new file and get until we get the good ending. And let's start it off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Alright, so the very first thing we do, we luckily are allowed to skip the opening cutscene. The developers did allow that. There are other cutscenes that we're going to have to skip in different ways, but luckily we get to skip right past this first one for free by just holding a direction. This game is a honestly pretty underrated game in my opinion. It's a Metroidvania mixed with a Dark Souls type game. I know you hear that all the time, especially in the Metroidvania space, but this one really does borrow a lot of the gameplay mechanics from Dark Souls. It is a 2D game, but it has all those RPG elements. So you have various stats that weapons require minimum stats to use, and they scale with different things, just like all the RPG elements from Souls-like games. But it's also got some pretty fun Metroidvania aspects as well, including a lot of the 2D platforming type things that you see in 2D Metroidvanias. One of the first things you'll notice is that I do have a stamina bar, which is up in the top left hand of the screen. This is known as force in the game, but I'll frequently refer to it as stamina. Dashing is a fundamental ability, which we're going to be doing obviously a lot of, because when you dash, you go quickly. But unfortunately, it takes a good chunk of stamina to be able to dash. It takes 22 stamina per dash, and we only have 60 to start. So we can only do 3 dashes with the base level of force that we start with, but there is a trick which you'll see me doing basically constantly throughout this run, which is known as shine dashing. This is tricking the game into thinking I'm doing a back step, but instead directing the momentum forward. And it actually gives us slightly more distance than a regular dash and takes only 5 stamina to do. So it basically allows us to dash infinitely, and obviously it's pretty good. Unfortunately, it's a very, very tight trick. It requires me to press jump and then dash in quick succession while not holding a direction, and then turn around and hold that direction so that I go in the right direction. So it ends up being a pretty tricky thing to do, and we want to chain them. If you see me randomly jumping or backstepping, it's because I am bad at that trick in particular, but trust me, nobody is really truly good at it. Anyway, we're getting underway here with just some of the tutorial areas. You'll notice me skipping a lot of tutorial prompts. We do actually have ways of skipping through a lot of this area, but I am running a version of this category which is known as restricted or no major glitches. Effectively, I'm not going to be doing any of the crazy things that are possible if we don't restrict anything, including out of bounds, including all sorts of glitches, like dying immediately after starting the game and just randomly being teleported somewhere else. It's a little bit broken, and also very chaotic. So instead, I'm running this restricted category. It's pretty close to no major glitches, but there are still a few skips that we'll be using, and you'll see plenty of action here as we go through. The very first thing I'm doing here, this is a bit of an unintended sequence break, but it's not actually anything that we're skipping. It's simply using these hidden breakable walls to go and pick up a couple of materials before we typically would have access to them. This enemy here kind of serves as a deterrent to that if you're playing the game normally, and obviously it's also hidden, so you tend to miss it. But we do want as many upgrade materials as we can get early on because we want to get a more powerful weapon as soon as we can. This game has very, very long and difficult boss fights, and we are going to obviously try to get through those as quickly as possible, which will require us to go and get extra damage in a couple of cases. Let me just really quickly... Okay, I did. For a second, I couldn't remember if I picked up those Twin Fangs. That's a relatively recent reroute, but it's sort of essential to the version of the run that I'm doing now. Luckily, we didn't forget it. So these things that I'm picking up here are blood metal splinters and shards. These are the upgrade materials that we'll be needing. You'll also notice, as I'm going through here, there's a number of basic mechanics that the game has been introducing me to, but obviously I've been skipping past all of that. Also, if you haven't noticed, I am playing in Chinese. That makes the text slightly faster to mash through. So you'll see most of the game you probably won't be able to read unless you read Chinese, which I do not. But the main mechanic in the game that it's teaching us here is something called absorbing. It's effectively a parry, and it is really, really essential to the way that this game works. Basically, every enemy has parryable attacks, including bosses, and you really want to parry as much as possible. Unfortunately, there are times where absorbing is actually slow because it kind of slows the game down a little bit, but it deals generally enough damage to be better than attacking normally for most bosses. And already we're here at the first boss. This is Amalgam. Amalgam opens up with a phase that's sort of just reminding you that you can absorb those arms. And then we see the full version. One thing I didn't talk about is there are also 2 types of attacks. There's red attacks, which cannot be absorbed, like that. And then there's regular attacks, which we are able to absorb. If we can get... Okay, well, that's a decent pattern. So I can't absorb these red attacks, and you have to dodge them. Luckily, the dash does have iframes, so we can dodge through all sorts of attacks. These attacks are absorbable, and they're the main damage source for us in this fight. As you can see, that deals 80 damage. The weapon, by contrast, deals something like 20 or 30. But yeah, that's the first boss down. Luckily, not too difficult of a boss, and in the speedrun especially, it's really not too bad. So right after this, I'm going to be doing a trick, which is a cutscene skip. So like I said, the very first cutscene of the game, we are graciously allowed to skip. No other cutscene has this luxury, so we have to come up with ways of skipping certain segments. And this one's a little bit tricky, so I might miss it, but the way that we do it is I have to set up a backstep, not like that, I promise. Over here, I'm going to be trying to backstep into the cutscene trigger and pausing the game at the same time, just like that. Now, I quit to the main menu and load back in. That's much faster. The cutscene is about 30 seconds long, so this saves quite a bit of time because I am now able to simply skip that cutscene. I am going to be taking a safety up here, which is shattering at the bottom of that ladder. No, I'm going to be taking this safety here, which is a surrogate. These work as basically the bonfires of this game, the save points. If I die, I will respawn here. This is just slightly out of the way of the route, but it will help us because this next area can be a little bit rude at times. There are certain enemies that can one-shot you. It's painful and it's unfortunate. Now I'm going to show one of the other main mechanics if you're playing this game casually, which is that when you absorb an enemy, you can see that 1 out of 8 in the corner of the screen there on the left-hand side. You make progress toward a trait. This is basically an ability or an enhancement to some abilities that you can get. Oh, I can't see anything. By basically defeating enough enemies, specifically using the absorb ability. So essentially what we're doing is we're stealing the power of these enemies. In this case, they are the wretches. When we kill 8 of these, or absorb 8 of these, we gain the ability to... Ooh, this is exactly what I was worried about, so I'm glad I dodged out of the way there. That would have killed me if it hit me. But we gain the ability to use Ardor for extra damage. So I haven't talked at all about what Ardor is, but it's the number up in the top left-hand corner. It's currently 48, now 51. This number goes up to 100, and if it reaches 100, I'll get a bonus damage as long as I have the Wretch trait, to the tune of 30% with the level of the trait that we're going to be getting. So this is very, very good for some of the later bosses, and it turns out to be worth it, even though it takes a pretty long time to absorb enough of these wretches to get it. They are pretty much all on the way. It's just a little bit tricky. Okay, I'm also going to be picking up these items here. These are effectively small little bombs. I'm going to use them to open doors later. The way that Ardor works, I've told you it goes up to 100 and we need it for extra damage, but I haven't really talked about how to get more. The way that you do it, you may have noticed, is actually by killing enemies. So with each enemy we kill, we gain 3 Ardor. If we absorb them, we gain 5 total, 2 for the absorb and 3 for the kill. So really we want to, not out of that, we want to kill enough enemies to get up to 100 Ardor. By the time we fight our first boss. That's pretty easy to do with the route that we take, but that's why I went out of my way to kill a few extra enemies. Okay, and here is the first of the skips that are going to be in the run. This is the entrance to Gloom Nest. We are not supposed to be able to get here now. And this one, the first time you hit that, almost always it goes too far, so I'll have to do it again, but that's fine. We can actually hit this with just the right timing, and it opens this up. This allows us to enter here and take an alternate route into the next area of the game very, very early on. We do this mostly for upgrade materials, but also we get the weapon of choice for the run down here. So it's a pretty useful set of things. Once again, they are doing their absolute best to throw these explosive lads at me. I suppose that's the marathon luck. Okay, but yeah, this is the first little bit of respite that we get. I'm going to do some upgrades here. I have enough levels to get the basic stats that I need for the weapon that we're going to use, which is the bow daggers, and I will also go ahead and pick up that wretch trait that I was talking about earlier, and another trait which gives me just a little bit of bonus stamina after doing a parry, which you'll be able to see later on in this run ends up being extremely useful. But the bonus damage is probably the most important thing. But one thing that I didn't talk about is that actually you lose all of your ardor if you die. When you die, all your ardor goes away, and you have to go and collect your corpse, basically, in order to gain half of it back. So I really don't want to die to bosses, or I lose basically 30% of the damage on the second attempt, but hopefully it won't be too big of a problem. It basically just means that the retries on bosses are going to be slower than the original attempts. Alright, this is the second skip. It can be a little bit finicky. If you stand against this wall and use a special attack, then sometimes you can basically get slightly into that wall and jump on up. This is not deemed to be a major glitch, and it allows us to enter into here pretty easily. I think if you all saw what the major glitches in this game were, you'd agree that that one is not particularly significant. Alright, I want to get away from this boy, and we go ahead and open that wall with one of those bombs I picked up earlier, and we are into Lithic. So Lithic is the actually intended next area of the game. We took a detour into Gloomnest and picked up our bow daggers, but this is where the game wanted us to be all along. And we are going to go on to our next boss here. Alright, so there's a lot of dodging of enemies, but most of the movement here is pretty straightforward. We're going to do our best not to take any more damage. We do get a free moment to heal here. You can see I'm at 96 ardor. That's not quite enough, but I might actually get enough if these two enemies here will cooperate. Looks like we're not going to be so lucky, unfortunately. Sometimes they can get crushed by the little pillar that goes and drops down on them. Okay, but yeah, we're gonna head on over to here. We're almost at... Oh, I need to actually absorb you. We're almost at Mothers, which is the second boss of the game. And this one is going to be a little bit silly. So you'll see me do, a trick, which maybe is, when I say we have to fight the bosses, sometimes I lie a little bit. The first phase of this boss is completely trivialized by the strategy that we do. We picked up these items, which are significantly more powerful bombs. And what I'm going to do in the first phase here is throw 3 of them at this mother here, and we're already into phase 2. So that's a very long phase otherwise. But now we only have to deal with the second phase of the fight. Like I mentioned, there are red attacks, which we cannot absorb, and then these regular attacks, which we can. The main idea of this and all fights is finding ways to dodge the red ones, finding ways to absorb the absorbable ones, and doing your best not to get hit, and not to run out of stamina. Alright, so that was Mothers. The second boss of the run. After this, we get a little bit of a stretch of pretty much just walking and platforming. We're going to meet Shidra, who is the first NPC that we're really going to interact with, and will be a pretty important feature of this run, as we'll see later. But yeah, most of the movement isn't too crazy at this stage. Everything is pretty much coming down to shine dashing. This new ability that we just picked up is called Pull, and it allows us to pull platforms toward us, and also to pull enemies, which we're going to be using quite a bit as we continue with the run. This ends up being extremely helpful. It's sort of the sister combat ability to the parry. Most bosses have now another type of attack which can be pulled rather than parried or just dodged, but you need to basically just keep track of what color the attacks are. It is a bit rough on people who are colorblind. I have seen a playthrough where basically someone had to sort of divine which attacks were the pullable ones because of that. But they usually have a ring around them as well. So if you're able to see it, it is pretty important actually for some of the later bosses. So you're going to see me pulling basically anytime I'm able to for almost all of the bosses in the game. All right, so up here is Shidra. Shidra is the sort of the main, I don't know, the leader of the central hub here, but we're going to see a lot more of Shidra throughout this game. Shidra gives us our fetch quests in the mid-game and tells us basically where to go and how to fulfill our destiny. I haven't really talked at all about the lore, but we are a black hole on top of a body here. I don't know if you all have noticed, but yeah, that's basically the idea of it. It's why the absorbing of enemies is sort of the go-to move to kill, and actually that's sort of what this entire game is focused around. We're a black hole, and black holes tend to not exactly leave things intact. That's not exactly what their job is. So Shidra is basically helping us to oh, I have never achieved that before. That's very interesting. Okay, that saved it a little bit of time. Shidra basically is telling us what we need to do. Sends us on a series of fetch quests, and we basically follow it because we don't know any better at the moment. You saw me just pick up a couple of items there. Those are a safety. Those are breath dew shards, which are a full heal effectively. That's 2 of them. I'm going to be picking up 3 more later. All of these are pretty much on the route and really not too bad to get. But sorry, I had to focus for just 1 second while I killed this enemy. All of those are on the route and not too bad to get, but there are some things, some safeties that I'm going to be picking up that are a little bit more off to the side just because we're in a marathon. Usually those I would skip in PB attempts, but the other ones are so on the route that we actually still pick them up. All right, so let me just equip everything that needs to be equipped. Once again, we're taking this surrogate. This one is actually not a safety. This is part of the route. So I'm going to go ahead and upgrade as much as I can. I like to go to 5 force. That actually is the threshold for 1 more dash, and I'm getting yet another trait. So I haven't talked about the hunt points. That enemy that I killed up above, I went a little bit out of the way to kill because it drops a hunt point, which allows me to use those traits, like the trait that's going to give me the extra damage, and many other traits. In this run, we're only picking up 4 distinct traits. Now we have 3 of them. 2 of the beginning enemies actually conveniently have some of the most useful traits. And then the other one being the Wretch, and 1 more that I'm going to pick up a little bit later on. Most of them are centered around dealing more damage. App, unfortunately, was a little bit slow there. Oh, I don't like this. Okay, it didn't chain hit me. Sometimes that can happen. The one that I just picked up deals extra damage when we are repelling an enemy, which is a type of parry that I can talk about a little bit later. And the first one, as I mentioned, is one that restores stamina when we're... did not mean to jump there. When we're doing a parry or a repel, both of which are pretty useful. Alright, so we go now into Feaster's Lair, and if you have any aversion to teeth, this is where I would recommend you maybe look away for a couple of minutes. This area is very, very toothy. You can see a lot of the teeth around. We're going to be pulling teeth up out of the ground and also out of the walls like this to get around. But I promise it's not too long. It won't be here forever. Please don't spawn. Okay, good. The enemies in here can be a bit of a hassle, and this is definitely one of the scarier areas. We do need to make these relatively precise jumps through these pairs of teeth, and I'm going to be doing that throughout the whole area. Luckily, iframes from Dash help us on that one. Okay, so made it through that section just fine. I'm going to go ahead and heal here. this right here is another optional enemy, but it's one that we want to kill for both the trait and also the point to be able to equip the trait. So this one kind of pays for itself. It is the Tongue Brute. It gives me that hunt point. That's that red diamond that was on its health bar. And also you can see it chasing me. Sometimes it's fun to try to outrun it, but here we didn't quite have a chance. We had to pull the teeth. But that trait gives me extra damage after I do a pull. So those are the only traits I'm actually going to be getting. 2 damage-based traits and 2 traits that really help with the parrying side of things. There has been talk of cutting that particular trait out of the run, but it just makes fights a little bit easier, a little bit more consistent at the moment, so we are keeping it for now. All right, and pretty soon I'm coming up on the next boss of the run, actually. So this run tends to be pretty fast-paced in the beginning. The first 30 minutes or so are pretty quick, and then the back half tends to slow down just a little bit. You saw me there equip and use an item known as a clutching root. That item increases my damage by 35%, I think. It's certainly enough to be worth it. And hopefully, okay, good. And we can go ahead and use that before literally every boss fight for the rest of the run, so. Alright, have to dodge here. This is the second phase of the vulture fight. It's a little bit trickier than the first phase. You saw we went pretty quickly through everything in the first phase, but in the second phase I have to be a little bit more careful because you actually have to kill these extra spine snakes that get spawned. Okay, which was pretty smoothly done there. Okay, nice. Definitely happy with that. So we can go ahead and gather our next ability. And this one's actually probably one of the best pickups in the game. It allows us to actually dash in the air. That's going to give us access to the later sections of the game, and it also marks the end of probably one of the more dangerous sections of the run. So happy to get through that without any real problems. Okay, so here I'm using an item called a level am dust. This returns me to my last surrogate. We can also do this by dying. There's an intentional death warp button that's actually included in the game, which is pretty nice. If you are a... that's not where I am. If you are a speedrunner of a lot of other games, you may know that death warps obviously feature in quite a lot of speedruns, but a lot of the time the developers aren't so kind as to basically build in the functionality for you. This game does, however, because of the fact that when I shatter, I lose all of my ardor, I actually want to use that item instead for this particular death warp because we want to keep the ardor. I also picked up an item along the way there that you probably needed to have very, very good eyesight to notice, but when I picked it up, it seemed to give me 3 items, and actually this is probably my favorite bug in the entire game. The blood metal chunks that I'm picking up, those are upgrade materials. When I picked up that item a second ago, it was supposed to actually be the bow daggers, but that's a weapon that I already have, and in fact I'm using. The developers accidentally placed that weapon twice in the game, and so when you go to pick up the second one, the game does a check, which is intended for New Game Plus mode, which checks to see if I already have the weapon, and instead give me upgrade materials as consolation if I do. Since I'm already using the bow daggers, it gives me these basically sort of treasure trove of upgrade materials, which we then can use to upgrade them. So it's pretty nice. All right, and this is Shidra. We do have to return to Shidra between basically every segment of this early game here. Shidra, as I mentioned, is the one who is going to be telling us what to do and also giving us access to what we need. Shidra, of course, is also the one that's upgrading our weapons, so Shidra really the pillar. That's a fun joke if you know Grime. Trust me, I can't possibly explain it. Of the game here. All right, so now I'm continuing on into the next area, which is going to be quite a long platforming section. So I've been talking a long time. Zoki, if you've got anything you want to chime in with, now would be a good time.
Sure thing. You've been mentioning Ardor a lot. I like what I've learned is you definitely needed to beat the bosses. I just want to point out you've been getting a lot of Ardor in chat. There's a lot of love. I see a lot of your emos in chat, and also we've been getting a lot of love for Cora this event. We have helped raise $3,244 right now for Cora for Corathon. Those were two separate things. And again, Corathon is a mutual fund aid fundraiser where we are trying to help our friend Cora get out of Texas because we want to make sure that our friend can move to a place where she can be who she is, safe and without worries. Corathon was put together as an impromptu event, and so it wouldn't have been possible without the help of like all volunteers, runners like Math here, and of course you, the viewers and donors. So thank you so much for any and all support that you can give Cora in her time of need, so we can help her move to a place that will respect and protect marginalized communities. That's !donate in the chat if you are able to give, and even if you're not, thank you for being here. And I'd like to say enjoying this run, but there's definitely some things I'm going to be seeing in my nightmares tonight here.
Yeah, I am sorry. Grime is a great game, but I definitely I understand the appeal of the the game might be a little bit tainted by some of the body horror things that go on. But I promise
it's a good thing I'm a fan of horror speedruns.
There you go. Alright, so I've basically just been going through Servant's Path here. It's one of the scarier areas of the run. I did stop and take an extra safety, which was an additional surrogate. We didn't need it in the end, but that was mostly just so that if anything went wrong in the second half, the run back would be something like a minute instead of like 3, so, you know, just hedging my bets a little bit to stay under estimate here. But we're into the next major area, which is the Carven Palace, and this is a doozy of an area. We're going to keep this surrogate for the entire time, but luckily the way the area is structured, it actually sort of lends itself to only needing this surrogate. There's an elevator in the middle of the level, and we're going to basically progressively unlock more levels of the elevator. So I do need to work my way up Carven Palace, but it's not as bad as it could be. That was extremely awkward. Don't worry about it. We're fine. Luckily, this area does give you a lot of additional heals throughout, so it's not too bad. And because of the fact that we are opening up the elevator stops, the run back at almost any point is never too bad. There's a lot of spikes, though, and a lot of enemies, and basically we're just trying to avoid any combination of those things. So most of the time we're just going to run past enemies. If they're too much in our way and we need to kill them, then we will do so. But if we can avoid it, we do. We're past the point of needing to kill any enemies for traits or anything like that, so it's really just moving on through. This is one of those heals which I mentioned, the honey-looking thing there. These spikes, these blue ones, we cannot dash through. They are electrical, and that is one of the features of this game. There are certain kinds of spikes that you can't dash through, certain kinds of spikes that you can parry, and others that you have to dash through. So it's quite a lot to juggle. I almost missed that. Sometimes this enemy simply does not attack, and I don't know why, but I'm grateful. That is very kind of it. All right. So yeah, these sections can be a little bit tricky. The idea here is we need to basically go and get our own platform. There isn't a platform where we need it, so instead we're bringing this one with us, and this platform... let me down, thank you. This platform can be pulled, but it but it won't move on its own until you pulled it. So it's a little bit tricky. I have to also pull it over anywhere where the wire is broken. Otherwise it will disintegrate and return to the top. If I fall off, then typically I have to completely restart. I'll go ahead and open that. That is a shortcut to bring the platform back more easily if we do make a mistake up here. You may notice these red thorns here. If I walk into those, I will be respawned at the bottom and have to do the whole thing again. So just wanted to avoid that, but we made it through nice and clean. All right, I'm going to go and open a door here. This is, once again, a safety. This leads back up. Hello, if I can actually open it. There we go. This leads back up to the second level of the elevator. So if anything does go wrong and we die in this segment, then it will be very quick to come back up. We have to manage our stamina as we're doing all these things, and it can be very tricky. So yeah, this area, it takes a lot of learning. As you can see, things can go wrong very quickly. But like I said, they give us a lot of heals, which is nice, and it's not so bad once you are used to it. All right, just had to time that. This next one is kind of fun. We do, once again, need to bring our own platform with us because we don't have one. This one is already taken, though, but there's a fun little trick that we do there, which is respawn the platform, and the enemy doesn't go with it. So basically, we steal the platform right out from the enemy's foot, and then we can take care of the enemy with no further problems. That is the break in the wire that I needed to avoid, so just making sure that we're safe there. And then we have one more little section here where I'm going to try not to get hit by that particular spike or by this particular enemy. All right, there we go. Easy. And this is the third level of the elevator, so once again, a bit of a pseudo checkpoint. If I do die in this segment, now I can come all the way back up to that third checkpoint from the bottom. So you can see how the area, while scary, does kind of build itself in a way that isn't so frustrating to retry. Casually, that's very good because it's very easy to die in the palace if you don't know where you're going or don't know what you're doing. The enemies in here can be very tricky. The platforms can be hard to navigate when you're first learning things. So I'm glad that they give you so many checkpoints. And basically, we're just doing our best not to get hit. At this stage, I really don't want to get hit because it will reduce my ardor. I guess I didn't talk about that. Not only do we lose ardor from dying, but we also lose it from being hit. A lot less, though. So we lose 2 ardor anytime we're hit by an enemy. Hazards, luckily, do not count for that, so if I walked into those electric spikes, it would have been fine. But if I'm hit by an enemy, then I lose 2 ardor. And it can be hard to get back because you need to kill an enemy to get 3 ardor or absorb 1 for some more. So I want to keep my full bonus, which only comes at 100 ardor. If I have at least 80, then I'm getting most of the bonus. If I have at least 60, I'm getting some of the bonus. Below 60, I don't get anything at all. So ideally, we want to keep that number above 80. And if it's at 100, then we're doing great. All right, this is the next major boss, and it is one that gives people the creeps. I think it's a very, very cool boss, personally. This is known as Shapely Fidus. It is a hand with an interesting body here, a very shapely body, I'm sure the game would say. And, yeah, some interesting features, basically. A hand with hands, as my dear friend Quacksilver has put it. But this fight is a little bit tricky. There are several attacks which are not dodgeable, and some attacks which can be parried, like that. I meant to do this. Oh, 1 hit away. That is so unfortunate. But that's okay. Okay, so I got pretty good patterns there from Fidus, so it was able to be a pretty quick fight. We had full ardor, so that helped a lot. This is the final phase, and it is the spider phase, as I like to think of it. The hand at the top of Fidus kind of breaks off and acts as sort of like a spider. This is the part that probably creeps people out the most. I'm sorry if that is you. I promise the later bosses are not nearly as disturbing, but it's basically a waited out stage. I can't deal any damage to the boss. I simply have to wait for it to self-destruct, which it's about to do here. And then I can collect the next ability. And this ability is a pretty essential one. It is known as Self-Pull. It's basically a grapple type ability. It'll allow me to pull myself up to specific spots. Here I'm going to do something which may come as a surprise if you were paying attention earlier. I'm going to intentionally die and return down to the surrogate I took at the bottom of the palace. You might be thinking, okay, but you've been talking about ardor and how you lose all your ardor when you die and how you didn't want to do that. There's actually items in the game that can restore your ardor, and luckily we actually walk pretty much right over to that each restore it to 50%. So basically we can just use those two items to get back to full ardor, and I don't need to worry about it at all for this middle section of the game. We have one more fetch quest that we're going on here. I need access to this. Goodness, please. I need access to this elevator, which this puppet was blocking. And this will take me back to the world pillar, the main hub of the game. But now I can head down and into the garden, which is where we're going to pick up the next item that we need as part of this fetch quest. So this is basically a long traveling section. It's a little bit dangerous, but we will be using our new self-pull ability, which you'll see in action very shortly. And yeah, it's not too bad once you're used to it. Oops. Just missed the ladder there. That's a new strategy I've been going for. It's slightly faster than dashing across to the ladder, but unfortunately just missed it. So here's the self-pull. You're going to be seeing a fair bit of that. But yeah, basically this is just running through this area, doing as many shine dashes as I can, trying not to get hit by anything, trying not to die. I'm going to actually heal because there is a free heal here, which I'm going to take. Beautiful. One very nice thing about the self-pulls as well is that they fully restore your stamina when you use them. That helps a lot because it means that I can basically time out my dashes. We're just going to heal once more. Time out my dashes to run out of stamina just when I'm about to get to a self-pull, and it works pretty nicely. Okay, so this bit here is a fun little drop down. We once again just want to be sure not to take too much damage here, but there's no boss waiting for us at the end of this segment. It's simply a fetch quest, so luckily this isn't too bad as far as health or anything is concerned. I'm okay to take a little bit more damage, which I almost always do right there. This is actually pretty good. I'm usually at lower health than this, and we can just go and pick up our next items. All right, so this right here is the item that I was referring to, which is going to give us additional ardor in a few minutes. Right, we're going to use it right before the next boss. I just want to take a second to pick up one additional bit of upgrade material to max out our weapon. Just want to play this a bit safe. Okay, that enemy didn't even try to attack me. Okay, and this is what we needed, the Strand of the Child. This is the last thing that we're going to turn into Shidra, the last thing that Shidra needs, and we are going to basically go and talk to Shidra, get the final thing we need from him, and then head on down into the next area of the game. So I'm keeping this surrogate here in Carven Palace because the next place we need to go is actually to the right. So we will get one final upgrade on our weapon. This is actually an upgrade which has been just recently routed out of the run, but it helps just to make the bosses a little bit more consistent, especially in the case where if I die and lose some ardor, it'll be nice to have the additional damage. So we're just going to go ahead and pick it up. But yeah, Shidra has been, dutifully telling us where to find everything. We've been listening. Sheedra gave us access to the palace. We got the Strand of the Child for them, and now they're telling us, okay, you can go ahead and head on in to the area beyond the barrier. So there's basically a barrier between this world and the world of the Carbon, which is something you'll see in just a minute. It's a little bit creepy, but it's less creepy than the teeth or the hand person. So, you know, I promise it gets better as you go on in this game. But along the way, we run into a good friend of ours who we've seen actually a couple of times, but I haven't talked about. This is Jan, and Jan goes through quite a journey in this game. Unfortunately, you won't be able to experience that full journey, and we actually have a fun little way to skip the upcoming fight. So Jan, typically, we do have to fight. Because Jan sort of turns on us, doesn't believe that we should be going into the city, for reasons that you'll probably come to agree with Jan about. Jan tries every trick in the book, tries being angry at us, tries pleading with us. Jan basically goes through all the stages of grief here, and we consistently ignore all of these pleas for mercy, and we simply continue to march on past. Jan finally decides, oh, okay, well, we're doing the fun yawn skip, so I don't know why this happens, but sometimes we don't even trigger the fight, and you know what? That's a lot of times, so we'll take it. So Jan normally summons 2 little enemies to come and attack us, and we have to fight this little mini gauntlet. It's not quite a boss fight, it's something a little bit less than a boss fight, but in that case I managed to skip the final dialogue and we didn't end up getting them to spawn at all, and I was able to just walk on past the arena. We have not been able to reproduce this consistently. Several of the runners have gotten it several times, but we still don't know why, but we'll take it, so we don't have to deal with Jan at all. So this is the area beyond the barrier. It is a pure platforming area. Everything here is just straight up platforming. We're using all the abilities that we've picked up to this point. The air dash. Ooh, I don't have the stamina. Beautiful. The air dash, the self pull, everything that we need. And we are basically just going to go on through here and work our way into the next city. So this is another good time to pause. If you've got anything that you want to share.
Sure thing. I actually do have a donation here. We've gotten $21 from the Valiant Sun. Thank you so much for that generous donation. And they say every good moving trip needs road snacks. Can we get a $1 donation train so Cora can get some quality snacks on her drive to her new home? I think that sounds like a fantastic idea. I mean, I personally love snacks, so I'm all down for anything that gets anyone snacks. But also, the Valiant Sun is one of our runners tomorrow. They will be the runners for the 4-player glitchless seeded community center restoration run of Stardew Valley tomorrow. So once again, Corathon is a community effort, and so thank you all so much for coming together to help Cora in her time of need. And once again, can we get that $1 donation train so Cora can get some good snacks?
Absolutely. That sounds like a wonderful idea to me. Chat, I hope you can come through if you're able to. It's a good cause for sure. Getting Cora somewhere that she is accepted for who she is with some good snacks. I can't think of anything better. Alright, so I'm coming up here on the next boss of the run, and this boss is one of my favorite bosses, not just in this game, but actually in any game. I love this boss. The boss is known as the Final Performance, which is a strange name for a boss, you might think. We typically refer to them as TFP, but it is just a dance of a fight. I'm actually going to put some points into health here, just to have a little bit more cushion against potential disaster, but luckily we're in good shape here. As I mentioned earlier, we went down to 0 ardor, and that's a problem, except for the fact that we picked up these 2 whole husks in the child bed, so I can actually just use those here, and you can see my ardor is now back at full. I'm also going to be using the clutching roots, which boost my damage an additional amount. And yeah, we're basically just going to do our best to work through this fight. So this fight has several stages. This is the first stage, which we call the elevator stage. It is a static pattern. So the exact pattern of these ballerinas is chosen from a few different types of patterns, but you get exactly 3 of them, and then we move on to the next phase. There is a cap to the amount of damage that we can deal. Oh, that was pretty nice. Okay. You can't go beyond about 70% of damage here. But after 3, we go into this stage regardless. This here is the primary stage of TFP, where basically they will be attacking us with all sorts of different sequences of attacks. Some of them can be parried, some of them cannot be. This is very dangerous. Most of these attacks steal almost all of our health in one shot. And the timing to parry it all can be a little bit tricky. Our goal here is to kill TFP before we get to the next stage, and actually I think we just might do that. We did. Wow. Okay, ballerina phase skip. So after that would have been... Hello, TFP? Would have been another phase where we see a ballerina get summoned and brought out to basically continue to try to attack us while TFP effectively dances around and choreographs the ballerina. I think it's a very, very fun phase. It's a little bit unfortunate that we skip it. I mean, obviously it's good because we save time, but I wanted to showcase that phase as well, so I'll have to be a little bit less quick next time. That's the problem with +6, I suppose. But yeah, that was TFP. Great fight. I loved the fight casually, and it took a long time to learn how to do this fight in the speedrun. These bosses are tough. The main trick, like, you can see that if you don't get hit, everything goes very smoothly on these bosses. Where things start to fall apart is anytime you get hit at all, you lose quite a large chunk of your health. So learning how to adapt to having taken a hit or 2 is really important. Learning where you can fit in your heals. I do have 5 additional heals here in the bottom slot of my inventory over on the left-hand side, so I'm feeling pretty confident. We actually only have 1 more boss left in the run. What we did there, just as a quick explanation of the cutscene that you just watched, we actually absorbed the entire city that we went through. So I didn't really talk about it, but what that city was basically a city of effectively a death cult. They have been waiting for our arrival, the arrival of the black hole, to come and destroy the city, and they kind of like loved the idea. So they wanted this perfect city to be created that would be worthy of destruction, essentially. And when we come in, they're very, very happy. And that's sort of the idea behind the final performance. They have choreographed this great basically sign off, this final performance for the city, and they expect to lose. They don't act like they expect to lose. Believe me, when I fought the final performance the first few times, it didn't feel like they were trying to lose, but you know, they wanted to give a worthy fight, and I think it's a very weird concept for an area in a video game, but in this game, that's sort of par for the course. But yeah, now we're into one of the final areas. This is the Pale Sky, and it is another platforming section. So I'm basically just going to be working through here. The ability we got from TFP was double jump, which is necessary for this section. So you're going to be seeing me use it quite a lot, but obviously all the other abilities as well. And yeah, this is another good point, probably one of the last before the end, if you want to jump in with anything. Zoku.
I mean, first off, I'm kind of like on the edge of my seat just watching you double jump across all these spikes. Like, like, oh my gosh, you are traveling through this so smoothly. I did want to shout out, we just got a raid from Happy Bear Lives. Happy Bear is one of our hosts later in the marathon. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you haven't heard, from Happy Bear. This is Corathon. We are raising money. We are a fundraiser raising money for Cora to move out of Texas to Colorado. If you'd like to donate, we've got a couple of options. Nightbot hopefully providing the blurb, but let me just read that out loud for you, just in case you're a little busy. Exclamation mark donate in chat, or Nightbot will give you that link. You can donate directly to her Venmo or to her GoFundMe. If you donate directly to her Venmo, that helps her avoid any GoFundMe fees. Whichever option you feel the most comfortable with, we have something available for you to use, because really, to help one of our own community members get out and get somewhere safe, and that's one of the most important things we could possibly do.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. We are near the end now of this final little platforming section. There is a fun skip that I'm going to be doing here, where I'm actually going to be waiting long enough to start to crumble. So if you blinked, you missed it, but basically if you fall far enough, then your dash doesn't stop you from falling anymore. And what that effectively means is your dash actually becomes a diagonal dash, and it allows you to actually go through some spike hitboxes that are horizontal. So that saves just a bit of time. That right there was just a very short cutscene skip, and I am going to go ahead and take this surrogate. This is the penultimate surrogate in the game. It is the one before the final boss. I'm going to put, I guess, a couple more points into health. Why not? And let's go on and see who the final boss is. So if you've played this game, then you're well aware of who this might be. But if you haven't and you've only been watching this run, then it may also not exactly come as a surprise to you. But this boss is in fact going to be the very person who helped us out the entire first, really 75% of the game here. Lurking in the background, we can see them. It is actually Shidra of the World Pillar, our good friend and fetch quest giver. It turns out that Shidra really does not want us to achieve our goal. I haven't talked very explicitly about it, but maybe from my description of what happened in Cenotaph City, you may have guessed. We are a black hole, and our goal is to actually absorb the entire world. Shidra, unsurprisingly, isn't exactly a fan of that. And actually, in this cutscene, Shidra gives you a choice. Shidra says, basically, you can go ahead and allow me to trap you and to stop you. And that's what Shidra has constructed. All those things that we were doing for Shidra, all the fetch quest, was actually to build this device that is going to basically trap us here. But the other option is to say, no, we're not going to let you do this. We are in fact going to fight back, and we use our ability to repel to actually fight off these energy waves and go into one of the better boss fights in this game, the boss fight with Shidra. So this is the final boss. It's a pretty good fight, and this marks the decision to go into the good ending. Whether you think it's good or not, of course, may depend on your point of view. We are going to be sucking up the entire world in our role as the black hole. But it's at least the ending where we don't die. Well, no, I suppose we're still alive at the end of it. I'll admit it's not great when I have to specify exactly who's alive at the end of this ending, but you know, I still think it's the good ending. Regardless, this is what differentiates kinship percent from the alternative, which is called weakness percent. That's not on the speedrunning community. That's actually the name given to the ending. It's called the weakness ending by the developers, and so we simply stuck with it. Oh my goodness, none of those hit. I cry. Okay, that's okay. Lost just a little bit of our... Oh, I thought you were doing a rocket. That's okay. A little bit of our energy there was wasted, but that's okay. Okay, so this is midway in the Shidra fight. Shidra stops for a bit to summon ads, and those ads will come fight us. Once you kill them, then we go back to the main fight. Shidra actually healed during the entire section where the ads are around, so you really want to move through it as quickly as possible. So far, this has been pretty good, other than my missed special attack, but what are you going to do? Hopefully nothing too bad. Yeah, and you can see we're dealing pretty good damage when we have +6 on our weapon, a fully upgraded weapon. Turns out it can be pretty speedy. Alright, this should be the final attack. Oh, okay, no, you're dead. Good. Okay, so there's one final section to this, and it is a bit of a climb. So the boss fight is technically not over, but the hard part of the boss fight is. So we do this little bit of platforming. It reminds me quite a bit, if you played Hollow Knight, of the climb just before the true ending of that game. Basically, we are climbing up here to race Shidra to the top as the world starts to disintegrate below us. And then we get this final phase, which is actually, I think, one of the more fun parts of the game design here. It's a throwback to the very first boss of the game, whose attacks are entirely these hands that are basically trying to slap us, and they return right to that. The only way to beat this phase is to absorb those 4 final attacks, and you have to do it in the specific order there. The other attacks were red and therefore not absorbable, but we got through it pretty cleanly. So that was the final boss. That's Shidra. We're not quite done with the game yet. There is one little bit of victory lap that we're going to be going through. Yeah, this is nearing the end here. So yeah, any final words that you have, Zoku, before we move on? And yeah, this is about a 2-minute platforming section before we finish off.
Well, congrats on beating Shidra. I can't believe we were the bad guy all along. For certain definitions of bad guy, just like good endings, certain definitions.
Yes.
I did want to shout out, we got a $50 anonymous donation, no comment, but thank you so much for that generosity to Cora's cause.
Thank you. Yeah, and this is one of the final bits of the game here, one final bit of platforming, and I get to use a trick that we actually didn't see in the rest of the run. So I'm going to try to do it here. Okay, that one is a little bit hard, so looks like we're not getting it now, but that's okay. We have the bellow mace here in our hands. I haven't used this weapon at all yet, but it turns out that if you interrupt the air attack, you can actually gain a little bit of extra height from it. So we call these bellow mace jumps. We recently discovered that some of the bellow mace jumps are actually graphics dependent, which is very unfortunate. So I'm only able to do the ones where you can dash out of it rather than using a pole to interrupt it. But you can still do quite a few of these to skip kind of large sections of this climb here. Yeah, so I am glad that we get to show this little bit off, and that was the final one. Unfortunately, ran out of stamina there, but that's okay. And we are on to the final stretch here. So we climb up to the very top of the world. This is called the Peak of Creation, and time will be coming up right here, and that is time.
GG's.
Thank you, thank you. Nice. Looks like we're coming in under an hour. Beautiful. Yeah. So yeah, thank you guys, everyone, for watching. This was definitely a pretty smooth run. No real major hiccups. Just a few safeties that we took. But yeah, this was a really fun showcase. I want to shout out the GRIME community. You can find our Discord on speedrun.com. It's the official GRIME Discord. We have a speedrunning channel there, but we are a pretty active community. It's a small community, but growing pretty quickly. We keep dragging more and more players in. Tons of discoveries happening all the time. We're constantly rerouting. constantly improving the records. It's a great run, and it's a little bit difficult to get into at first, but we have beginner routes and maps and everything to help anybody that's looking to try the game out and try it out as a speed game. And yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for hosting, Zoku. I appreciate that.
Thank you for showing Grime off. I mean, I joked about it being in my nightmares, but for all the horror, it really is a very beautiful game.
Yeah, I think there's something very pretty about the way the game is, even if it's a little bit horrific at times. You know, it's beautifully horrific. If that makes any sense at all, probably not.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, that especially that ending bit just now, but like, and I know speedrun, we skipped over a lot of the story, but from what little bits you gave us, it sounds like it had quite a story to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely a good bit of story, a good bit of lore hidden in there. There's a lot of characters that I think are actually pretty fun to interact with. There's obviously a lot of tragedy in the story, given the way that it ends, but I think it's a very well done game. And they've got a huge update coming out soon with a new game plus mode, which is going to be a lot of fun too. So looking forward to that.
All right, well, I know I want to see more of this game, but if people want to find more of you, Matt, where can they do that?
You can find me most weeknights over at twitch.tv/mathulu. I'm also on YouTube as Mathulu as well, but mostly I stream on Twitch. I will be doing some more Grime. I'm actually showcasing this again for a GDQ Hotfix show next week on Tuesday night, so if you are interested in catching that, feel free to tune in then as well.
All right, and thank you so much for showing this off for us first. We beat Hotfix, y'all. You heard it here. And stick around. we absolutely aim to be, including being the trendsetter and helping trans people get where they need to be to make sure they can live their best lives. And so once again, thank you so much, Grime. Thank you so much, Matt, for showing off Grime for us. Stick around, folks. We've got more amazing runs coming up for you. We'll be right back.